time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is back. And yes, you see me Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week because this is how we roll, right? We have different surprises and returning guests that want to come back. And this week has been a really crazy week for Miss Liz. So before we get started, I'm going to get everybody over to the YouTube channel. Give that little doorbell a little ring, and you can listen to these Tea Times at any time in your home, at work, in your car. At an event. If you're bored, you can turn on Miss Liz and listen to a podcast, but don't tell anybody I told you that. And again, I want to thank everybody for all your support for Tea Time with Miss Liz. But today I have husband and wife in the house, and I have Elsbeth Meuth and Freddy Zental. I hope I've said it right. If not, I'll get her to say it. But today we're going to talk about intimacy, relationships, and all of that good stuff. So this is going to be an adult show. So if you have little kiddies in the room, you might want to let them just go into another room, playtime. But we're really going to dig deep because Miss Liz is going to get something from this tea time, and you're going to get something from this tea time. And if you know somebody that can get something from this tea time, pass this tea time along. So let me get started with the disclaimer and then a little bit of the bio, and then I'm going to get my incredible guest in here, and we're going to spill some good TEA. And today's TEA is teaching sexual enlightenment. That's right, I said sexual enlightenment. So we're going to go deep. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. Today, we do have some doctors in the house, some incredible experts in the house, so I do really want you guys to pay attention. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact Miss Liz through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that this show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless it's a surprise or a returning guest that comes on a Monday or Tuesday. And yesterday we had our first show on Wednesday. So you never know when Miss Liz is coming and sharing tea. So now a little bit about my guests. Well, they have assisted over 10,000 couples and singles worldwide in rekindling and expanding their love and relationships as founders and directors of the TantraNova Institute in Chicago. They were featured on Showtime, captivating documentary series Sexual Healing, where their expertise and guidance have illuminated, I'm not saying that right, the path to deeper intimacy and connection. Their invaluable contribution led to an appearance on the Emmy Award-winning NBC show Starting Over, solidifying, I hope I'm saying that right, their reputation as trusted authorities in the realm of personal growth and relationship enrichment. Their book, Sexual Enlightenment, How to Create Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love, and Intimacy, is a transformative masterpiece that delves in the depths of human connection, providing readers with invaluable wisdom and practical guidance to unlocking last fulfilling and deepen their understanding of intimacy. Elsbeth and Freddy Zental best-selling book is a beacon of light, illuminating illuminating the path towards authentic and profound relationships. For full bio, you can go over to Miss Liz's Facebook page and check out these incredible people. And let me get this couple in so we can spill some tea. Welcome, guys. And I know I didn't say it right. So how do I pronounce your name?
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Liz, for having us here today. And my name is Dr. Elsbeth Meuth
and Freddy Zental.
Thank you, guys. I am so sorry about that. Sometimes my tongue does this tongue twister thing, you know. My anxiety gets all best of me when I get on the live, and I don't know why that happens, but I've been doing it for 5 years myself, right? So, so I want to take you guys back a little bit before we get into today's tea. And I want to get to know you guys as little ones, because the inner child has a lot to do with the older child, right? So could you tell me a little bit of how you were as a little girl and how you were as a little guy and who you guys are today so the audience can know a little bit more about you?
Wow, what a great question. Do you want us to start it?
Okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, absolute, Liz. You know, we never forget who we were coming into the world because that's who we are now. You know, and so yeah. So I was really a very precocious little guy. I'd like to say hello to people I didn't know, and adventurous and full of curiosity. And I haven't lost any of that. And through my life, I've always had that as a through line in terms of how I was and how I am in the world. What we do now, presenting to people and sharing these concepts and ideas and how to be more fulfilled and happy in their life and relationship. I was first introduced to these practices that we teach when I was 13 years old. I was living in Hawaii, going through my puberty, spending a lot of time in the shower, as a lot of guys are at that time. My father at the time was a practicing psychiatrist, took pity on me, thought I was probably going to hurt myself in the shower. And he gave me a book to read on how to integrate sex and meditation. So, wow, I loved it. My girlfriend loved it. And more than that, it opened up the possibility for me to move towards what I had really deeply wanted and desired, which was to go on to college on athletic scholarship. But I didn't believe that I would get the training or the recognition or could do it. Well, the practices really assisted me in shifting that belief. And I did all the things you do to go on to college on athletic scholarship. After college, I kept doing these practices and going to workshops and reading books and applying these principles in my personal relationships. I was in the software business for a long time in the Bay Area. And initially, that was really an exciting industry. After about 10 years, it was just a job. And knowing what I knew about my own engagement in life and my own excitement and really enthusiasm, something was missing. There was an opportunity in Chicago. A company hired me, moved me here. And I was still in the software business. I was single, looking for Shakti, a female Tantra partner. And Elsbeth's profile showed up online, and we met. And I say 6 months to the day we met, we transcended what I call the romantic drama and created this work, TantraNova, sharing with people, couples, and individuals, as you mentioned earlier, all over the world for the last 23 years, how to create more love and intimacy and lasting fulfillment in their life through just living. The practices guide you, and we'll get into this, right into remembering what we've forgotten. And we'll keep unpacking that as we go. But I'll pass the baton over to Elsbeth.
Okay. So my little girl, I was born and grew up in Germany. I'm one of 10 children, the fourth. And so there was a lot of flying under the radar, you can imagine, because there was not so much attention on each of the children because there was just no time available. And so I became independent quite early. And that really, I see how that is a through line into my life now. I came to the States in my late 20s to do postgraduate work in music. And then a couple of years later, I got my doctorate in education. And then I moved into management consulting. And I had gotten really good in consulting, yet was very despaired in intimate relationship because Miss Liz, I had that pattern of attracting unavailable men. And while that was exciting, most of the time I was alone. And there came this moment when I hit 50 that I got really aware of, if I was not going to change the trajectory, I would end up without lasting intimacy and love in my life before I was going to leave this planet. And I did not want to settle for that. So I knew there was something in the way, however, I couldn't see what that was, which meant I couldn't remove it. That led me to deeply delving into studying Tantra, a form of yoga that deals with the energetic body instead of Hatha yoga that deals with the physical body. And that includes our sexual primal love, mental and spiritual or consciousness self. So the whole, all dimensions of us. And it was a really deep dive that opened me up to myself and to the blind spot I had around love, and most importantly, trusting, because I cannot love if I don't trust. Now, I didn't run around like a distrusting bitch at that time, but an availability is a sign that there's something not only off with the other person, what about over here being available? And that is what I discovered and cleared through my tantric healing so that I could become available. And then, a few months after my sexual healing, Freddy came into my life and he was available. And I believe if I hadn't cleared that unavailability stuff, I would not have recognized him as a potential partner. I would have seen him. He's tall, he's handsome, yet not as a potential partner. And that is so important, when people date, when people want to bring a beloved into their life, that they look over here, what is going on with them, not from an analytical point of view, because that usually doesn't resolve anything. We want to tap into the subconscious. And we're going to delve further into that in our conversation.
Well, and the reason that I asked that question is who we are as youngins and who we are as now is because a lot of it has to do with what we do in the purpose and why of our life when we become adults. If you've been silenced as a child, you're going to have a voice when you get older. You're going to be a speaker. You're going to be motivated. And I always wanted to know about the spiritual connection because we don't talk about it enough, right? And when we talk about sex, everybody's like, oh my God, that's dirty. Get away from it. There's no clean, healthy sex conversations going on in today's world. It's wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and move on. Or you get attracted to the man that is already taken or the woman that's already in a relationship and you're really messed up, right? So I want to get into the conversation today of how you healed yourself for your sexual healing, first of all, and what got you to open up that you could trust.
Yeah.
Because trust is a big thing in any relationship, whether it's sexual or just a friendship connection, right? The trust has to be there.
Yeah.
And I suffer from trust. A lot of people that know Miss Liz suffers with trust because of a lot of betrayal. So how do we get to those stages in life with the sexual healing?
Well, okay, I'll start with this. So this is the core of the work, the core of our life's work, all of us. So, we look into the world from, as you said, this clay that I call it clay that we have evolved from all the experiences that we had. The good, the bad, the rainy days, the in love, the out of days, love days, the broken hearts, the in love, money days, and so on. But at the beginning, it was womb service. We all started out that way. It was just wonderful, right? We were in the womb and we were taken care of and it was so safe and food. We didn't have to think about anything. Then all of a sudden, our brains are developing. We're born, whoosh, bright lights whacked on the bottom. Some guys are getting their wee-wees cut. You're thinking, if you could, send me back, And then we get to a point in our life where we want to create something, maybe love, after we've been through a divorce and bad relationships and this and that. But we see in this possibility of what we want. Yet we're looking into the world from this clay of experiences, right? So the work that we teach really assists people in getting connected to, as what we call the curious witness of ourselves, this clay that we're looking into the world from, and watching all of the neurosynaptic, emotional, energetic stuff that comes up around the resistance to what we most deeply desire. So when the sexual piece comes in, it's an altered state of consciousness. Some people use plant medicine, some people use therapy, some people use nature walks, but very few people learn how to work with the altered state of the sexual as a meditation or a transformational practice. I mean, forever we've been, creating life. Forever we've been procreating, not forever, but the last 100 or so years, recreating with the development of contraceptives. And so now what we're teaching is how to co-create with this sexual energetic intelligence. And there's an intelligence, because when we're in our sexual energy, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed, more endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones. So we're in an altered state. So the distinctions that we teach in our workshops as a practice to use this as a meditation are breath awareness, certain particular ways of breathing, the parasympathetic breathing, which we can talk about more later, the witness state of mind, where we're starting to watch the thoughts, the conversations, the stories that we live in. And then intention, like I want to create a beloved, I want to trust, whatever it might be. And then you're working with those things in this altered state. So we're now more vulnerable and receptive to the subconscious aspects of ourselves to shift that.
Yeah, I'd love to build on that further, what Freddy opened up. We use that chemical shift that is being produced through the rising of the sexual energy. Also, I just want to say something. We distinguish between sexual energy and sex. They are not the same. Sex is the act, and yes, there's sexual energy involved. Sexual energy itself doesn't need to be expressed in sex. It can be actually transmuted from the sexual center into the heart and then embellish the emotional connection with self, and if there's a beloved, with a beloved or with my child. Because it's not that we act upon the sexual, we use that life-giving creative energy that is sexual in nature to fuel ourselves, to fuel our physical body. I can actually heal myself with it once I have some training. I can integrate my sexual with my heart self, my love self, because they are often compartmentalized, that we may have closed off our heart because it was too painful. So some of us, like I did it, I just have sex, or had sex in order to get love through sex, which is a little difficult, We want to come back into the unity of the sex and the heart. It's essential for feeling fulfilled and then connecting with another, with the beloved. And so what else did I want to say there? So yeah, the chemical change when the energy gets aroused, what is being activated are the feel-good hormones, dopamine, melatonin, what is the other one called?
Serotonin.
Yeah, no. Anyway, all these, brain chemicals that make us feel good. Endorphins, that is what I was looking for. And we love that feeling because there we are in joy, in pleasure, and when we have sex, we may feel that. However, what we are saying, how would it be if you consciously cultivated that, connect consciously with that sexual life-giving energy so that it can fuel my heart, my love, that it can imbue my mental focus, and that I can channel it into what I want to bring forth in the world. My projects, writing a book, creating a relationship that may be my dream, whatever, going to the moon, I mean that literally, and so this is what then allows us to take that beautiful life-giving energy to whole new levels. In the process, we want to clear all that what's in the way, because if I feel guilt, if I feel fear, if I'm anxious, if I'm embarrassed or feel shame, these are constrictive emotions. So they constrict that life-giving energy. So often in the work, that gets cleared out. Otherwise, the energy cannot move freely, And that back to my own healing, to healing trust or distrust, I had actually discovered I had towards men without my conscious knowing, but in the subconscious. And often that is related back to your question from earlier, from a time when we were a child or an adolescent, in my case, an adolescent. And then that can come up also in the healing, can get cleared, can be left in the past then, instead of being on my shoulders for the rest of my life. And what aliveness, what vibrancy, what joy with self, and then in relationship can be created.
Well, something that you both said, and I like it at the beginning, is you said it's not about the sex, right? It's the connection, the enlightenment, and the energies. A lot of people talk about sex. I just had sex with this guy, or I just had sex with this woman, but there's no intimacy. There's no spiritual connection that we're talking about, that we're bringing to the table. And this is why I invited you guys, because I want to have this conversation, and I want my viewers and listeners to understand that there is a difference. And it does go back to the inner child. It does go back to the when we were young. If we didn't see healthy relationships, how do we develop healthy relationships if all we seen was bad relationships as well?
Yeah. I want to say, Liz, that, the sexual gets misconstrued because what has kept us continuing to procreate is because it does lead us to what I call the sexual intelligence, which is that love, that openness, that vulnerability, that intimacy, that open-heartedness. We often misconstrue that with falling in love or some romantic love. But when we approach it consciously, what starts to show up is a way of communing with that foundation of where we come from and a part of who we are, as a way of looking into the world and being. So that sense of love and connection and oneness is more available to us outside of the practice of meditation or outside of the practice of conscious lovemaking with yourself or with a partner. But mostly we do it and we fall in love because it felt so good, and if we felt so open, and there's something magical about that person or about that act. And it's the intelligence of what that act leads us to remembering, which is that oneness, that connection. I used to say when we started our work 23 years ago that this is really about creating peace on earth, because we could teach these practices to nuns and priests if they were vowed to celibacy. It's not about the act of sex. It's about where that energy leads us. And there are meditations and practices that you can do that are very intimate, that aren't necessarily sexual in the strict sense of the meaning. Yet they lead you to that intimacy. Someone can, oh God, sexual, but you can hug somebody and they can go, it's like, it's just too intimate. It's too exposed. It's too close. Yet what is there to be afraid of? To be seen. We walk around unseen and we don't speak the truth. We don't say, I love you. We miss most of our life because we're so, hidden. So there's an openness that this energy leads us to. That is what I've seen from the people we've worked with who aren't necessarily great meditators or experienced yogis or yoginis. They come into this work and they come in willingly. Anybody who's willing in a body can get this. And they are reminded of how to get out of their own way to create what they've set down as intentions to bring into their life. And it starts to show up. Just like I think you mentioned earlier that there was something about you are a certain way, you're because of some things that have happened in your life. And I don't want to diminish those things that have happened in your life. It's that how can we, and we all have that same blueprint, things that happen and we remember them into the now and into the future. And how can we be with that as a witness of ourselves and keep moving with grace, ease, and flow towards this thing that I most deeply desire, which in your case, it might be, I don't want to be, whatever, or whatever it might be for me. So it's like, how do I keep watching and moving? And that's what this work's about.
And Freddie, you can go as deep as you want. On my platform, if I cry, I cry. If I laugh, I laugh. I want the authenticity, right? I want the rawness, and you can use me as an example. I don't have any issues with that, and my listeners knowing I'm very open but I'm also closed, if that makes any sense.
I know. I get it. Yeah, I do theater and performance, and I can be totally available on stage. And then afterwards, I want to just not speak much or not say much, and not put it out there. So I get it. That's all part of us all. Yeah. So I don't mean to use you as an example, but I talk about you and me and all of us because we all have the same blueprint, just different stories.
Well, and I think in knowing the blueprint has a lot to do with the connection as well, the openness of the blueprint, because some of us, we close up because of past traumas or bad relationships that we've seen growing up. um, for me, it was more about the connection, the spiritual connection, for the intimacy, where I'm finding guys that are just like, oh, let's just have sex and let's just move on and it's done and over. Let's have a cigarette and carry on with life. Go do your dishes, go back and you know how do you find somebody that can connect with you spiritually, with the mind, the body, and the soul? Like, you guys have found each other and you're able to do that blueprint together. So how do we find the blueprint connector?
So it starts with ourselves, because whatever I radiate, that comes back to me. Sometimes we may not like to hear that, but on the other hand, it's actually good news, because I cannot change someone else, but I can change myself. And if I have blind spots, just like I went when I was suffering under lack of intimacy in my life, and particularly also, sustained intimacy, is then to look over here. And sometimes, like for me, it was important to get guidance in it, because when we cannot see, we just cannot see. And trial and error is not going to do it, because we stumble in the same space with, blindfolded, so to speak. So the support with which we then can take off the blindfold so we can see what that may be for us. And as Freddy said, it's a different story and history for each of us. And I would even say, Miss Liz, that everybody has, residues. There is no soul on this planet that doesn't have wounding, that doesn't have experiences that had them shut down, that then, re-emerged, that shutting down in our adult years. And then we can really notice that they are in the way. So we encourage people to really look what may be over here with oneself as the access. So, like, back to the trust, because as you said, trust is so fundamental. And if I have anything going on with trusting, if I'm suspicious or have my heart closed off because at some point it was not safe to keep my heart open. So it was a great protection at the time. That is how I coped. However, then in my, adult years, when I do want to connect with a beloved, guess what? The heart is still closed, energetically speaking. Even when I think I want to be with another, even when I go and search for another. But energetically, this is still, constricted. And so we want to clear that constriction so that the heart can open. And yes, with the heart opening, vulnerability shows up. And old memories may come back, not only as a thought memory, but in the physical body as an experience, perhaps as hurt or pain, emotional pain. And to go towards it so we can move through it. Because it's just like the eye of the needle. If I don't move through the eye of the needle, there is no other side. And the good news is when I move through it, it will not last forever, that being in the eye of the needle. We move through it. It takes willingness and courage to go there, because that is what we closed off in the first place. So in our work, that, we talk about intimacy, you talked about intimacy. So there is sexual intimacy, there is emotional intimacy, there's mental intimacy, spiritual intimacy. And we want to venture into that further, discover ourselves. The more I come into integration, the more I can flow, the more I'm available to myself, the better I can attract exactly this wave in another. Because if I don't vibrate on this wave, so to speak, I don't invite it. If I vibrate on a constricted heart, that is what I invite. Sometimes it's like a diagonal thing. So, like my heart is constricted, so I may just invite sex. But that's not conscious, you know? And that is what may bring men to you who are geared more just sex. Often, and perhaps you can speak to that, like how it is for men accessing their sexual center, because that is where they start feeling.
Maybe Liz wants to respond to anything.
Well, I'm just taking it all in, right? Because, and I'm glad that you brought up all the different types of intimacy, because there's a lot of it that we're not being taught, and I think that intimacy should be taught in schools to our children, because we're teaching sexual intercourse, but we're not teaching the four stages of intimacy and connection. We're talking about the foreplay and the intercourse, but we're not talking about the pre-play and the afterplay. These are four things that people are not talking about. We're just talking about 2 out of 4. And the intimacy as well, we're not talking about healthy intimacy. We're talking, people are using words, but they're not understanding the words.
Yeah.
And that's why I use this platform to get that education out there, and to have guests like you guys on, so we can get that education, the proper education out there, where we're looking at husband and wife right now who are sharing the different types of intimacy, the different connections, the different blueprints, because each one is different. Freddie, I do want to get your feedback on male perspectives of, maybe I'm getting it wrong. Maybe the men want more and they don't know how to ask for more. Could that be a reason?
That's very good. When you talk about blueprints, when I mentioned blueprint earlier, I meant the blueprint of us, experiencing something from the past and living it into the now and into the future. That's the general blueprint, though we all have different variations of that. So for men, in all the variations of Tantra that there are, and we're TantraNova, Tantra New, one of the primary edicts for the man is to learn to separate ejaculation from orgasm. And that really allows the man to get in touch with how unconscious we are around our sexual selves. Because again, when we're in our sexual energy, as I mentioned earlier, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're changed, right? It's an altered state. Yet for men, we are given 2 emotions to socially be okay to exude, which that's fucking or fighting, those 2. Not intimacy, not nurturing, not tenderness. I mean, now it's starting to open up a little bit. But when men are in their sexual energy, all of those emotions are available to them. They're tender, they're altered state, they're different, they're more loving, and so on. So we start feeling in the sexual center, and that's where, so we get many couples who've come to us in the peak of their sexual health, and she's like, I don't know if he loves me. And she's like, of course, he's like, of course I love you. Look at my erection. And she's like, yeah, but can you kiss me with your heart? And that's not something guys learn to do. Yet in these practices, they do. So one of the practices for the man, essential, is learning not just to separate ejaculation from orgasm and last longer. That's the start. But in the process of doing and getting to that, one gets in touch with, again, this unconscious, automatic, what seems to be lusting. Is it too big? Is it too small? Shame, fear, guilt, falling in love, possessiveness, jealousy. All of these things are encapsulated in the sexual experience for men. So starting to get some distance from that and how that lives for us, we can start to, not be so controlled by it. So now a man in the next phase of this is he's learning now with the breath, a conscious attention and intention on the sexual energetic feeling, to move it with the breath up to the heart. So now he's actually internally shifting his focus in that altered state consciously to move that energy to his heart. So now he's starting to get some distance from that unconscious automatic lusting. Oh, it's hard, I got to do something, as opposed to really being in his heart and being conscious of who's there with him or with himself. And that's something that guys don't learn. And the sooner they can learn it, the better they can get at it as they get older in their life. I recently had a men's workshop, and two of the people in the workshop were guys that were 16. They were just coming into their puberty. And I'm so glad when parents send their kids or their young adults to these practices, because there's no nudity, so it's totally safe. And there's a self-love practice different from just masturbating that they are taught with puppets and clothes and so on, that they do as a personal exercise, as a homework exercise between the first day and the second day. And then they come back and they're like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And they start to shift in terms of, again, that's one piece of it, because we're actually working with that as a meditation now to then shift what someone has as an intention to create in their life. And someone says, well, how do you get from sex to creating, being a good athlete and going on to college? So this is belief, it's energy. So a belief that I can or I can't do this thing lives deeply. And so when I'm in this altered state, I start to get in touch with some of my ambivalence, some of my resistance, some of my belief that I can't, to then begin to recognize that and move that with my breath. And then again, with ease, grace, and flow, move towards this thing I most deeply desire without ambivalence, without doubting, without a belief that I can't. And so that's really how this works, and how we're using the altered state of the sexual to shift something in our life.
So we have a question that was asked a couple of days to me. What is the difference between desire and lust?
Love the question.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Yes. So, so desire is inherent in being human. It's also inherent in animals, even in plants. It's part of what embellishes growth. All creation originates from desire, even, if we want to build a home or a house, there's a desire for that, then has us, look at what plans, what architectural specialties do we want to have, all of that. And of course, in ourselves and in relationship, desire is a beautiful energy, like it fuels us. So what distinguishes the human being from the animal, because we are also an animal in the sense of that sexual life-giving energy that is pleasurable, that is desirous, is that we human beings are aware of that. We are aware. So we are conscious that we are conscious. Animals are conscious too, however, they are not aware of being conscious. And where that plays a role then is that when I'm conscious of my existence, I can actually start witnessing my emotional state, my sexual aroused state. We are then no longer just the impulse, because like the sexual energy is like that desire can be an impulse. And the lust is an expression of that.
Oh, the lust, let me say this, can I add to that?
Please.
Lust is a selfish love. It's exclusive. And desire is inclusive. If you say, well, they're both kind of, coming from, but I'm wanting to include, whereas lust is, I'm just about myself. This is a selfish love. And that's how guys are often, interpreted when they start with wanting to just have sex. But again, in that sex is desire, because the desire also for the man is to be open and expressed and feel loved and feel love and to be in an open heart. And that's the only place for a lot of guys that they're socialized and modeled and believe that they can be, or else they'll be beaten, they'll be destroyed if they are intimate and they are loving and so on. Now it's changing, which is the good news. Men are starting to open up and integrate the masculine, feminine, the yin-yang dynamic. which is
I really love that you said that, the yin yang, because I talk about this all the time, right? The balance of life. We need the good with the bad. It's
Mhm.
okay to be a little bit of lust in a relationship, but don't overtake that relationship with just lust. You know,
they're all
there,
part of the human emotions for sure.
right? And these are things that we don't talk about, is lust and desire. And it's not only the men that are lustful. There are some women out there that are, you know what, I just want to have sex with you and I don't care about anything else. I just want it and that's it, and let's move on. um, the reason that I truly want this educational uh, tea time out there is because we have all of these different sexualities that are coming into the schools, and a lot of the children are confused about their own sexualities. And I think that by knowing ourselves, by being intimate with ourselves and the different types of intimacy, we can understand our sexuality a little bit better as well. Do you guys feel that way?
Yeah, I would distinguish there that there may be more confusion about the gender, because sexual energy is within all of us. It doesn't matter what gender we are, if we are transgender, if we are bisexual, if we are homosexual, if we are heterosexual. We all are made of that life-giving energy. Without it, we wouldn't be alive. And yes, it is highly pleasurable when it is aroused. And so that is within all of us. For some of us, perhaps a little bit more, for some of us, a little bit less. It's greatly dependent on our hormonal stage, the balance of estrogen and testosterone, or vice versa for the one who is more in their masculine, between testosterone and estrogen. And they pretty much determine how we look and how we feel in our body, because testosterone is the hormone that really instigate pleasure. It's the alive, the joyous, the pleasure hormone. And so what I want to say here, Miss Liz, it's really that each of us, no matter what gender we tend towards, no matter what our sexual expression may be, is that we bring awareness to ourselves, to that life-giving energy, and connect with it. And it's all about greater freedom, self-expression, because that is where we are alive. So whatever may be in the way, to clear that out, be this in solo work, be this in work with a partner, yes, in partnership, it can be done either. Is that we become more aware. Just over the last, few decades, we have become more aware of our emotions. I think greatly inspired by the therapeutic approach in the Western world, therapeutic approach, that more emotionality has been allowed to feel, to be, to express, instead of stuffing it down or pretending it's not there. So in that sense, we encourage to connect with this life-giving energy and really learn to channel that energy instead of just being then at the effect of it.
Yeah, it's really, I would say, to add on that is how can we begin to experience all the range of emotions without getting stuck in any of them too long? Because they're all authentic. We get angry, we get sad, disappointed, and so on. And how quickly can we come back to center, which are where these practices, it's not saying one's bad or one's good. It's like, how can we experience the whole thing without being too stuck in any of it?
And then what we want to cultivate further is, how can I stay in a prolonged way in the high frequency emotions, joy, bliss, peace, compassion, love. These are all enlivening, uplifting emotions.
Life supporting.
Yeah, and it's not like that anger is a bad thing, not at all. However, if I wallow in anger, that can be actually sickening to my physical health, my emotional well-being and my mental health.
And you can see how you can have an experience that got you really angry, and then you spin it and you spin it 50 years and you live in it forever.
Yeah. So I want to build on how can we expand and widen that realm of living in love, in joy, and yes, in pleasure and bliss. And given that sexual energy is the kernel, the source of that pleasure, how can we draw on that and then channel it from that well of our sexual center where babies get conceived, where we can have the greatest joy and pleasure in the world, to breathe that up into the heart, channel it into the heart, embellish the heart, become integrated, and then into my whole body and being. Imagine full body orgasms or the orgasmic wave that lasts for half an hour. Not to get somewhere, to be somewhere. It's then about the journey, not about the destination.
And what's also interesting is when you bring consciousness to the sexual, the subtleties of that energy that Elsbeth was talking about, that we've all experienced for, say, 3 seconds or so in an orgasmic moment, become very, very familiar and accessible at the subtle levels, in the way that we have a conversation, in the thoughts that I'm having, in what we're seeing, what we're tasting. We become much more connected to that as a possibility of a feeling, not just a thought, but a feeling. We're now listening for it. We're feeling for that frequency. And that's the peace on earth that I was talking about earlier. And that's
I think peace on earth does come through sexual energy, right? Because we're all sexual beings. We're created through sexual energy. So I think it all aligns together. It all connects together once we start understanding that. And we don't have that conversation enough, where the sexual energies, right? We don't talk about the energies and the enlightenments and the connections and how we conceive children. It is through a sexual energy. Yes. Because there's so much more than just sex, right? There's so much more than just intercourse. Like you mentioned, the orgasms, healthy orgasms. There's different types of orgasms out there. There's the real quickie one where you just get yourself off. And then there's the ones where you said, like, you can last 30 minutes or an hour or over and over again. You're having multiple orgasms. We're not talking about those things either. And how we can create that education out there for the young kids. Like you said, Freddie, 16-year-olds coming in. And I'm happy that 16-year-olds came in. And it's not because I wanted them to all just masturbate or anything like that. It's getting them educated at a young age gives them a better sexual journey in their life.
Believe me, they're already masturbating.
Right? Like you said, 13, and your dad was.
I did it. We all did it, and then it's like, wow, this magical thing. I never have to leave this room, and you're just constantly masturbating, as opposed to, oh, okay, so it feels good. You can make life with it, and you can just feel good with it. Oh, you can meditate with it too, and to learn how to use it as a way to get through to yourself and create, if it's better test scores or better athleticism or better relationships or better whatever might be, something that's in the way of your joy.
Yeah. And let's bring it also now to the person perhaps in middle age, because our body changes when we grow older, starting in the 40s, 50s, hormones change both in men and women. And how can we connect with ourselves so that this beautiful life-giving energy just doesn't fall by the wayside? Like, oh, okay, it's not so spontaneous anymore how it was when I was 20 or 25. Yeah, it may not be like that anymore. But that is where we want to cultivate that connection. Learn to use the breath, the conscious breath that carries energy without breathing, like life force energy without the breath doesn't exist. Like when I don't breathe, I die, So if they go together in dying, they must go together when we are alive. And so in the tantric practice, we learn how to use the breath to affect the flow of energy while we don't generate life force energy, it's given to us at the moment of conception and leaves us at the moment when we leave the planet. However, through the breath, we can move, we can channel, transport that energy, be it that feeling in my sexual center, my yoni. By the way, I brought my yoni here. I thought I would show it to her. So this is a yoni. It's called in English a sacred space. And when she squeezes and releases, she starts talking to you.
Hello, bonsoir.
How are you, Liz? Anyway, so she's called Yoni, sacred space. And just imagine, Miss Liz, if you and I had been introduced to our sexual center as a sacred space, how our trajectory may have gone differently. Because a sacred space I honor, I cherish, I love, I respect. I was more, when I was brought up, it was more like, don't go there. Wait until you're married. And then, is it another's energy? So it was more like, it's not, as you said, alluded to it earlier, it's something bad or not good or sinful. No, this is the most sacred place because that is where creation comes forth, and also where the greatest pleasure emanates from. So we want to connect with that. We want to do practices that she is alive, just that the man wants to do practices for his pelvic floor to bring blood flow to the area. Because when a man grows older, same for women actually, it's all about blood flow. When there's more blood flow, there is more aliveness, then there's more pleasure. There is no orgasm without increased blood flow. This is why they invented Viagra. We say use the activation in the pelvic floor along with the breath. It brings more blood flow to the area that then can turn you on, so to speak. And then you breathe that turn on into your heart. And it's wonderful for longevity,
Yeah, once you start tapping
just
in.
wait a minute. So I am 75 years old. Freddie is, how old
Don't
are
you
you?
know, Leah?
You are 68.
68 years old.
It is, not only keeping ourselves alive. No, it's enjoying the aliveness. We want to cultivate that. And so, and it's never too late. If you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, if you're in your 60s, if you're in your 70s. Just recently, an 81-year-old woman came to us. She started out with my women's workshop, Feminine Essence, Awaken to Your Feminine Essence. Then she took a co-ed workshop. She wants to bring a beloved into her life. And she awoke further to her yoni and to clear whatever shame and guilt she may have had there for many, many decades. Now she is clearing it. She loves her yoni. She's more connected to that life-giving energy. And guess what? The heart is open more and ready to invite the beloved.
I would want to add too, for men, once we start learning the practice of separating ejaculation from orgasm and moving the energy with the breath, as we get older, men can work with a soft on just like a hard on. I know we love our hard ons. That's great. And with even a softer lingam, which is the Sanskrit term for penis, we can learn to tap into the sensation and move it to the heart. And it can be just as pleasurable as when we're really hard. So tapping in can really assist men to enjoy a larger, bigger range of pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful when a man is attuned to himself like that. Because what also opens up when he can do that, when he's interconnected between his sex and his heart, he becomes more present to himself, which means that he becomes more available in his feeling state. When I feel that with Freddy, my heart opens. So a man can be also then not only more present to himself, but also to his beloved, or in a same-sex couple to his beloved, because there's always one that is more in their feminine or yin and the other one in their masculine yang. If that wasn't so, there wouldn't be polarity wouldn't be magnetism.
Yeah.
So let me show something here, if I may, or if you want to say something.
Chime in there, Liz.
Yeah, we are
doing a lot of
talking so
talking.
much here.
No,
Show.
I'm letting everything in and processing it, and I have comments coming in, and people are really enjoying this conversation because I go deep, right? And I get it out there. A lot of people are not used to these kind of conversations, so some of them are, ooh, where is she going with this? But I wanted to get into, Freddie, you talked about the softness of the penis. That's still an arousement for women out there that we're not speaking about. Not all women are connected to a hard on. These are things that we need to start talking about, because the sexual connection is the mind, the body, and the soul. It's not just the body parts, and that's where we can have that sexual arousement still. I could talk about this all afternoon, guys, but we're getting we're getting almost at the hour here. So I just want to get your final words, and I want to know what you have, because I think you have something that we want to see. So let's wrap it up with that. And if anybody has any questions or comments that you would like to push on, if you're a little shy right now because it's a live show, you can always send them to Miss Liz, and Miss Liz will get them to Freddie and Elsbeth, and we can get you signed up for some workshops, because there is some workshops as well out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to harken back to the title of our book, which is Sexual Enlightenment. What we have unfolded here over the last hour is really that interconnection of sex, heart, and mind, and spirituality. So this is, while we call it sexual enlightenment, they are two sides of the same coin. We are both earthly being and humanly being and heavenly beings. So one way of you, the listener, the watcher here, viewer, can learn more is through our book, Sexual Enlightenment. And are we going to have that in the show notes?
Yes, I will have that in the show notes.
Great. So you can pick it up there, the link to Amazon, available both in hard copy and audio form. Sexual Enlightenment, How to Create Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love, and Intimacy. Then we have a special gift for each of you, because we thought, out of hearing today around sexual energy, heart energy, channeling energy, interconnecting with self, interconnecting with the beloved, that it would be great for all of you to actually learn some practices. So we created a video class for you, which is called the Introduction to Sexual Meditation. So when you pick that up, you learn several practices that will allow you to connect with your subtle energy and learn to move the subtle energy through your body. And that is the precursor then to channel aroused sexual energy. Without these foundational practices, there is no aroused sexual meditation. So that is available to you. Please pick it up. It comes with a complimentary consultation. So once you have watched it, once you have practiced it, you can come on and we can support you further in how all of this may apply to your very particular situation.
And Freddie, how do you want to wrap up today's tea time?
Yeah.
TantraNova.com.
Well, TantraNova.com. Elsbeth just told me to remind you of that. TantraNova.com. And for each of you listeners and all of us in our bodies and lives, to enjoy your life, keep breathing, and owning your upsets. There's nobody out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure having you guys, and everything will be in the show notes. So anybody that's listening to the audio or the video, you will see all of those goodies in there. I highly suggest you check it out. Miss Liz has also signed up. So, there's no shame in getting a little help once in a while. And I really want to thank you guys for having this conversation and being so open. We need more of these conversations out there. I am in the works of bringing a lot of my couples back together. So I'm hoping that you guys can join as a couple as well and bring some more to the table. We're hoping to do that in the fall. So stay tuned for that. We will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be talking about mental health. We have a personal story of a young lady that's coming in, and she created a nonprofit organization to empower women. And we're going to talk about that tonight at 7 p.m. So stay tuned. Check that out. Until then, check out Miss Liz's website at www.misslizsteatime.com, and you can find all of these tea times there. And keep serving your tea and keeping it real, because we can make a difference one cup of tea at a time.